Okay, this video I'm going to explain why I feel I'm called to teach eschatology. Actually, it's just the story of when God told me this is what He wants me to do. I was 12. I'm 50 now, and I didn't think it would take this long, but apparently God had to teach me a whole lot of stuff in between. I was 12 years old, and I was sitting on a bus. And at 12 years old, it was the first time I was really reading the Bible for myself. I mean, I could read before 12, and I did read parts of the Bible, but I was really diving and wanting to learn, and I could really read. I was reading the King James Version, for heaven's sake. So, I mean, before age 12, you didn't really understand it. But by this time, I really understood what I was reading, and I was really searching and just enjoying my time with God, reading the scriptures every night. And a couple different things happened. I started to realize every night I was just reading the Bible, and I used to watch TV shows with my grandmother, and my grandmother was very, very special to me. She died when I was 16, and I loved our time together, and I would watch shows with her every evening. Well, I started to not, and I would just read the Bible out in the living room instead. And I think God really kind of blessed me for making that sacrifice, because I did really enjoy being with my grandmother. But anyway, I was living with her at the time, and I was reading my Bible every night, and I started to realize after I think it was about 2 weeks, Jesus is here. Like, every time I open this book, I really feel God's presence. He's here. And I started to have some visions, and God started to reveal things to me at that time. Some things I'll share a little bit later, but particularly in this video, when God called me to teach eschatology. So I wasn't at one of the times I was reading the Bible, but I was involved in the bus ministry at my church, and we would pick up kids for Super Saturday and bring them to church and give them puppet shows and teach them about Jesus, and it was just really great. Anyway, I would help out on the bus. Well, I was sitting there on the bus, and all of a sudden, I was not on the bus. I don't know where I was, but I was not on the bus. Everything else just went away. And Jesus sat next to me, and there was an angel in front of me to the right a little bit. And Jesus said to me clearly, "Liza, you are called to be an evangelist." And no, he said, "Liza, you will be an evangelist." That's what he said exactly. "Liza, you will be an evangelist, and you will be teaching about the end times." That's all Jesus said. Then the angel gave me a vision of my future ministry that would be teaching end times prophecy. And it was just all end times prophecy. And I remember I knew that it was over, the session was over, and he was going to leave. And I started panicking. I'm like, "Don't go, don't go, don't go. Just stay here with me, please. Just stay here with me." And the Holy Spirit was still there with me as soon as Jesus left. And I felt them kind of just go off into the distance and get further and further away. And I was like, don't go, don't. I have so many questions I need to ask you. But he was still there, because the Holy Spirit was still there with me, and I could still talk to him, and he could still have a conversation with me. But that very, very, very strong presence, like Jesus himself sitting there, and the angel there was, gone. And I remember just always knowing that that's what I would do. But I got married, I had kids, and then my husband went to jail, and I was a single mom of 4 kids, and I was working 2 jobs. And it didn't ever happen. And I just thought, well, I guess I missed it. I screwed up my life. I screwed up my calling, and it's just not going to happen. But a few years ago, I was at my new church that I started going to a few years ago, and there was a special speaker, and I was just in the audience, and I knew that now was the time. Now it was time. And I didn't think it would happen this late in my life, but here I am. And I started thinking of doing this channel even then. And I even made a couple videos that I don't know if I'll upload, that I made. I just never felt it was the right time to just publish them and put them out there. I felt I needed to learn how to edit and stuff first, and just held me back. And I was thinking of other kinds of channels to do, and I wasn't sure. And all of a sudden, just tonight, I have a Facebook group called Jesus.Our.Avenger, an eschatology discussion group, and I've been talking with people there, and I've been talking on other eschatology groups lately. And I don't know, tonight I just knew. It's, I think, September 22nd. 2023, and I don't know, just now tonight it was like it was time. So I published a video on why I believe that Preach of Your Rapture is the truth. And then I wanted to share this story with you because I wanted you to understand why, I feel I'm called to do this and tell my story. But also for a couple other reasons. Ever since Jesus told me that, I knew that I had to be an expert on the subject. If this was my whole ministry, and my whole ministry was going to be teaching end times prophecy, I knew that I had to know everything I could. I had to be an expert on the topic. And I started studying end times prophecy. So I studied all my life. I wouldn't say it was consistent all my life. I got distracted, as I said, for many years. But the last, I would say 5 years especially, well, when I was 12 and through my teens and even all through my adult life, but especially the last 5 years, then just really studying everything. Another reason is, I never thought, I knew that I was going to only teach end times prophecy, but I couldn't figure out why God would call me to do that. Because at the time when I was 12, there was a lot of people teaching end times prophecy. There was a lot of people talking about it. And I'm thinking, why would God need one more preacher talking about it? I mean, I was happy to do it, but I didn't, understand why. And then I couldn't understand why everything I would teach would be end times prophecy, eschatology, because I'm thinking, well, after you tell the story, what happens, that's it. It takes a few minutes just to say what happens. I realize now, nobody teaches eschatology in church anymore. Nobody talks about it anymore. And what has happened in the last several years is just, especially since social media started, the theories and the teaching out there is so crazy. I cannot believe the crazy theories and the things that people are being taught. And I feel like now I completely understand why now is when God said it's time and not before this. And I also understand how my whole ministry can be about end times prophecy, because that's all I talk about now, really every day. That's what I talk about. And there are so many parts of it to address. And we're going to get into everything on this channel and maybe some other stuff. But, now I kind of understand. And I felt the need to tell this story because you may feel you're called to do something, or maybe you had an experience with God and you felt like you were called to do something and maybe you thought you messed it up. But you know what? You probably didn't. It just isn't time. If God said to you very clearly, like he said it to me, I mean, he sat next to me and I heard his voice and it was very clear. It wasn't my imagination. I wasn't like just hearing something and I think this is what God's saying. Like, it was Jesus sat next to me and he said it. And, maybe you had an experience like that, or, in any way you feel called to something, but you felt like you messed it up and you're older or years have gone by and you think, oh, it's just not going to happen. I just want to encourage you. There's a right time for everything to happen, and, just wait for the right time. You may not understand why it's the right time or it's not the right time, but God's timing is perfect. But also, I know that there are Christians out there who don't believe that Jesus can talk to us today. I was completely flabbergasted when I found this out. I just recently, for the first time ever, heard a Christian say this, that God only talks to us through his word, and he just think that these are Christians that never have a conversation with God. They don't sit and talk to God and hear from God. And they even said to me, if God is talking back to you, then you're crazy. And I was so taken back, because the reason that Jesus died is to restore our relationship with God. And it's a personal relationship with God. It's a relationship, and relationships are conversations and sharing things with each other. It's not just one-sided. You definitely hear from God. You definitely hear his voice. You can hear it audibly, but most of the time it's not audible. Most of the time you just know. He communicates something to you and you know what he's saying. You just know. But sometimes it is audible, like my experience I just shared. And so if you are out there and you think that God cannot speak to you, I want to encourage you to read his word and see that that's not true, that God has spoken to all his people. And sit and listen. Just sit and have a conversation with him. I mean, if you sit quiet before the Lord, you are going to hear his voice. He's going to speak to you. You're going to know it's him. And I just couldn't even believe that was like a thing. One person said it to me and I was like taken back, and I shared it with my group and I was like, can you believe someone said this to me? And then some other people in the group were like, yeah, God doesn't talk to us today. Like, that's crazy. And I'm like, what? I can't believe it's like a thing. Like, there are many people who call themselves Christians who don't have conversations with God. The whole point in being a Christian is that we are now restored to be able to have a relationship with God, and we are able to talk to him again now. Like, that's the whole point. I just don't get it. Anyway, so I don't know. You could tell me in the comments if you talk to God, if you don't think that you could talk to God today, how God speaks to you. If you want to share a personal story of, an experience you had, or if you have any questions, you can leave it in the comments below. And please like and subscribe, and I will be back with some more videos soon.